towns and cities into the mix, that math comes into the equation. This also means that choosing where to urbanize is a strategic choice that you will have to make. Cities add a large negative modifier to the food produced in a location. So building your cities where your food is being produced is
EU5 comes out, but figured I'd play one more campaign on it.
Is often not a great idea. But placing a city might be strategic-minded, not just efficiency-minded, so you might need to...
So what we'll do is...
think about where you're going to supply that city's food from. Will there be enough rural locations with food RGOs to supply a growing city, or will you have to import that food from... Europa Universalis 5 will generate a representation of every single person alive in 1337. This is so many people, it can actually be a little complex to figure out what they're doing. So, what do you need to know about population in EU5? Hello everyone, I'm Benjamin Magnus, and today, me and little Loris here are going to be breaking down the core mechanics of population, culture, religion, language, geopolitics, and disease. One thing I'd like to address right before we get started is that during the production of these videos, I have been strucken by a dastardly disease, which makes me sound like Zap Brannigan. I do apologize for any change in audio fidelity. This is episode number 2 in our tutorial series, and we highly recommend you check out episode 1 for more information about the basics of the UI if you haven't already. Furthermore, we do have all the information covered in this video time-stamped down in the doobly-doo if you are looking for specific information. Today we are stepping into the nation of Aragon, and oh look, we can see the Tinto offices from here. In the UI top bar, you can see here that we have a population of around 1.5 million. That means at the start of the game there are 1.465 million individual people living in our nation. Loris, can you bring out the chalkboard please? Let's start by defining what a pop...
In that case, I don't really get anyone's rival to anyone I want to ally with. So what we're going to do, we're going to release...
POP is an acronym and stands for Part of Population in Paradox games. A POP can be a single individual person, or a POP can be millions of people. In EU5, the defining characteristics that make up a POP are their culture, religion, societal class, and location. Diving down even deeper, POPs will also have their own individual levels of satisfaction, which will represent how pleased they are with the current administration, and literacy, which is an important driver of research. POPs will also help drive your economy by demanding different goods. Without your POPs, there would be no people to tax, there would be no workers for your buildings, manpower for your armies, and your colonies would never populate. Every system in EU5 ties back to your POPs. And importantly, the decisions you make, like which buildings you build, in which locations, and what mechanical choices you are making as the player, will shape how your population evolves over time. We'll explore many of these interconnected systems throughout this guide, so don't worry if it's feeling a little overwhelming at this point. Let's start by examining Aragon's demography and building up from there. Let's start by talking about societal classes. Societal class in EU5 can be split into a large pyramid with nobles at the top, followed by clerics, burghers, laborers, soldiers, peasants, tribesmen, and finally slaves. Typically, the more populous societal classes will be at the bottom of the pyramid, while the top of the pyramid will be home to less of your overall population. POPs will be assigned a societal class based on the job that they hold within your society. And
but for this campaign,
societal classes are not static either. It is perfectly feasible for members of your population to promote through societal classes multiple times and go from being peasants to nobles. It all comes down to how you build your society. In EU5, you will be shaping your nation and its people on the location level. A location is the smallest individual piece of geography on the map. Let's look in more detail by clicking on the town of Tarragona. We've defaulted into the location's infrastructure tab. Here on the left, we can see
Venice. Let's see. Yeah, we're going to do that.
A breakdown of our different societal classes in this specific location. We have a bar here that represents their current level of employment. If we look at soldiers down here, we can see that we have 1,100 soldiers available for work. 1,000 of them are currently employed at a castle, leaving 100 unemployed. The blue bar is representing current level of employment, and the green bar representing currently unemployed pops. Here we could see that wine is created in Tarragona as our resource gathering operation. If we click on the wine button, we will build a new level of wine RGO, and that will affect our workforce in Tarragona. Now we can see that we have a deficit of 650 laborers. That is not necessarily a problem though. Pops can be promoted over time. Here we can see we have a surplus of 33,000 peasants, and every month 14 of them will promote up into the laborer class. Something to note is that pops can demote as well over time. This will happen if their needs go unfulfilled for long periods of time. Back to what we were talking about though, filling these jobs can also be handled through migration. If we take a look at our demography tab here, we can see that we have a migration attraction in Tarragona of 0.56. Now, migration will change location to location based on many variables, such as the laws of your realm that might encourage or discourage certain pops to move about your nation. It is something to keep in mind, though, that migration is a tool that you can use to fill job vacancies. Now, unlike myself and Loris here, pops are not just a 2D abstraction of a job that is being performed in your nation. As we mentioned earlier, they each have their own culture and religion, as well as their job and their location. Let's zoom back out a little bit and take a look at the Societies tab for a moment. You can access the Societies tab by pressing F4 or by just clicking on it in your country panel. The first tab of our Society panel is our Culture. Here we can see the overall breakdown of cultures within your nation. Here we can see that Catalan is our primary culture, Aragonese is an accepted culture, Andalusi, Sephardi, and Gascon are tolerated cultures, and Sardinian and Castilian are discriminated cultures. There are several more cultures within our nation that are grayed out. We can see them by scrolling down. Because they make up less than 1% of our total population, we cannot interact with them directly as a culture. You may have noticed that when we hover over each culture, it will highlight on the map where that culture exists. Brighter green colors on the map represent those locations having a higher density of that culture in that location. In the information panel here, we have our primary culture, we have our common language, we have a pie chart of our cultures, we have our cultural tradition and cultural influence. When it comes to a culture war, we can think of these two as our cultural offense and our cultural defense. The assimilation rate into our culture, we currently have a negative modifier for being a spiritualist country. Accepted cultures. Higher levels of acceptance will make a pop of that culture happier. Here we can see the number of artists we can employ and our works of art in the country, which can also be viewed here. Okay. Works of art and artists will tie into the cultural tradition and cultural influence of our cultures. How strong your primary culture is can impact many different mechanics in the games, from assimilation to integration, spy network construction, diplomacy, and even sieges. We'll go into more detail about those culture wars later. Hovering over these two items will show you that a lot of the power of your culture is coming from locations, which is derived from the pops in those locations. Changing over to religion, we can see in this tab our nation's primary religion, our liturgical language, our religious unity, conversion rate, holy sites if there are any owned, our primary religious tolerance, our tolerance of heretics, and our tolerance of heathens. Depending on what religion your nation follows, you'll have a different religious tab here. Because we're Catholic, we have the Catholic Interaction tab. And on the Religion Breakdown tab, you can simply see a breakdown of the religions in our nation. On the surface, it might be difficult to identify the various mechanics that a pop's religion will affect, but this will become more clear when we cover linguistics in a future tutorial. For now, it's just really good to know where you can find this information when you need to go looking for it. The final tab on our Society panel is the Peoples tab. The People tab will give you a breakdown of all of the pops in your nation. We can see our largest pop are 50,000 Catalan peasants that are Catholic and live in Barcelona, and our smallest pop is this guy. We can see our promotion speed, demotion speed, and total population. We have a breakdown of all of our classes, the number of characters that live in our nation, our total population growth, if there's any separatism in our nation, our migration modifiers, our monthly rebel growth, and our average literacy. These three indicators here will show you each pop's literacy rate, their access to goods, and their total satisfaction. And as it relates to pops, you can check out the Rebels tab. One of the things to notice is that each rebel movement will also have a number of people tied to it. So 156,000 Sunni zealots might be something you need to take more seriously than 400 Ligurian patriots. An army marches on its stomach, and a starving peasant doesn't do any work. So it is very important to keep an eye on the food situation in your nation. Food is a great place to start because it's the first port of call to understanding the needs of your population. Food is consumed through 3 different tiers. Tier 1 being local. Food that is produced in a location will then be consumed in that location. Any excess food from that location will be sent to the provincial stockpile. If the entire province is still in the negative, it will then attempt to buy food from the market. If it fails to do so, your pops will start to starve, and starving pops is a bad thing for you and your people. Each of these tabs is a province in your nation. This number here is an aggregate of all of the locally produced food. Any excess is being stockpiled and then sent to the market. You can sell food as well. Any negatives are being purchased from the market before consuming your stockpile. Something to note is you can increase the amount of food stockpiled with buildings. If we open up one of these tabs, we can see the breakdown of where all this food is going and coming from. The percentages are the total amount of modifiers affecting food production. Higher modifiers means more food being produced. These numbers are the total amounts of production and consumption. These buttons will bring you to a build menu that will show you all buildings that are food related that can be built in that location. And this button here will show you if there is a food RGO in the location, and clicking it will increase the size of the RGO. As you can see, even with a high modifier, without the food RGO, you won't be producing much food. An ideal place to efficiently make food is Sidges, because it is a rural location, it has a high food production modifier, and it has a food RGO. One thing to keep in mind is that food as a resource and food as food is slightly different. If we take a look at wheat, you can see that every source of wheat will produce 8 food. If we take a look at fish, every source of fish will create 5 food. So wheat is a more efficient resource than fish if you're just trying to create as much food as possible. Furthermore, other RGOs that have a primarily industrial output like wool from sheep will also produce food as a secondary resource. Something to note is that any peasants working in subsistence agriculture will also be producing food. This means that rural locations will often be self-sufficient when it comes to food production versus consumption. It's when you add your towns and cities into the mix that math comes into the equation. This also means that choosing where to urbanize is a strategic choice that you will have to make. Cities add a large negative modifier to the food produced in a location, so building your cities where your food is being produced is often not a great idea. But placing a city might be strategic-minded, not just efficiency-minded, so you might need to think about where you're going to supply that city's food from. Will there be enough rural locations with food RGOs to supply a growing city? Or will you have to import that food from out of town? And if you do, are those trade routes vulnerable? You can see that we do have some provinces that are running negatives. That's not actually causing us any problems right now because the food that they need is being bought on the market. If we go back to our economic panel, you can see that we are buying a very small amount of food for 0.48 ducats. We can get rid of that expenditure by increasing food production, or we could just rely on the fact that we can buy food on the market. And on the other side of the coin, if you have a huge surplus of food, that could be sold for profit on the market as well. Starvation is definitely something you want to avoid as it has some extremely deadly penalties, like negative 5% population growth and minus 50% population capacity, which will lead to a rapid decline in population either from people dying or moving away to avoid a famine. Having just enough food is also a risky proposition, especially when armies are taken into account. A net negative province that buys from surplus within a market can easily be thrown into starvation if heavy military activity in the area consumes all of the food. So growing more food than you think you need is usually advisable. Like we mentioned before, you could build buildings like the granary, which will increase the amount of food surplus stored in a location. This can help your population flourish because you can get bonuses to population growth by having things like a large food storage in a location and cheap food available in that location. Now that we have begun to grow food and our population, it's important to talk about population capacity. Population capacity is tied directly to a location's terrain and geographic features. Its topography, climate, and vegetation all directly influence how many people a location can support. Perhaps one of the most important features is vegetation, which provides a baseline value for pop capacity. If we take a look at farmland, we can see that it provides an enormous 100,000 population capacity, which is double the next best vegetation, which is grasslands. You can also see it provides a bonus to food production, which we just looked at, and maximum RGO size, which is how many levels of an RGO you can stack on a single location. We could check the population cap for any location simply by clicking on the location and hovering over the population number. We can see right here that Sidges has a population capacity of 191,000 and where those numbers are coming from. So, why does this matter? Well, population capacity is also a driver of population growth. While you are under your max capacity, you get a population growth modifier of 0.2%, which scales down as you approach maximum capacity. Hitting population capacity will completely stop pop growth and provide additional malices to migration and increase pop demotion speed. But if you are trying to purposely encourage migration, overpopulating a location would certainly help. Now, we have talked about migration a few times, so let's delve deeper into that. You can grow a location's population by bringing in pops from elsewhere. Pops will migrate within a market, preferring areas close to them and moving from areas of low migration to areas of high migration. If it's legal, that is. For example, peasants might be blocked from moving in a feudal society if they are not given the rights to do so. Luckily, our commoner's estate in Aragon does have free mobility of peasantry, but that brings us to the next question. What makes an area more appealing to a pop? Migration attraction is something that you can affect. Here we have a breakdown in Barcelona of all of the factors affecting our migration attraction. Being a market center, being a capital, having high development, and high prosperity are all contributing factors, including buildings like cathedrals. Market prices and availability of land will also impact it, so it might be a good idea to try to encourage migration by lowering the cost of goods. One thing we just mentioned that we should go into greater detail about is development. Clicking on any location, we can find development here. Development is a measurement of how cultivated or utilized the land in a location is. Higher development will allow more pops to live at a location and allow you to exploit the resources to a greater degree. You can see that high development has a laundry list of positive modifiers. And here we could find the ones we were just talking about, population capacity and migration attraction, which both go up as development increases, meaning that a large city will have a tendency to want to grow. Again, you'll want to manage this carefully. If you pull everyone out of the fields too soon, that shiny new megacity might just starve out. You could increase development in an area in a number of ways, most notably through cabinet actions. But the main source of development growth is prosperity. Prosperity will be different for every location and is listed here. You can see that in Barcelona, our prosperity is low, and will give a number of negative malices. I found some high prosperity over here in Italy, and you can see that it will increase our migration attraction, monthly development, population growth, and character life expectancy. Prosperity will build up very slowly over time, so it will take a while for high prosperity to really accrue. Conversely, negative prosperity can happen very quickly. Low pop satisfaction, outbreaks of diseases, being besieged by an occupying army, a blockade, and if your location is being looted by an enemy army will all negatively impact prosperity very quickly. As you can see, the list of negatives from low prosperity and the list of positives from high prosperity are not equal one-to-one. Low prosperity builds up quickly and is devastating. High prosperity builds up slowly and gives small bonuses. So if you do get an area to be very prosperous, you want to protect it with everything you have. Now, for some of those more military-minded folks out there, you may have noticed that this is a viable war strategy as well. You may not have the staying power to siege down enemy castles, but maybe some smaller, faster hit-and-run tactics will negatively impact an enemy's ability to fund a war. Now it's time to look at pop satisfaction, and of course the consequences of low pop satisfaction. Satisfaction simply measures how happy your pops are with the administration. As you can see, we are on the population satisfaction map mode. This will show an average in every location of the satisfaction of the pops in that location. The number we see on the screen is an average. Now, each pop does have its own satisfaction, but all of the pops living in a location will have their satisfaction added together and averaged out through this score. Hovering over any location will give you a breakdown of how that number is being calculated. The four biggest factors influencing a pop's satisfaction are usually culture, religious tolerance, estate satisfaction, and whether the pop has had their needs met. Low satisfaction can have some pretty serious consequences, so you generally want to avoid it. One thing I do want to point out is that we are looking at Barcelona here with a very high average satisfaction of 92.31, but we have a monthly prosperity malus of negative 0.01. You may ask yourself why a high satisfaction is giving a negative modifier. The way this works is that at 100% satisfaction, there is no monthly malus to prosperity, meaning you will be getting all of the bonuses of the monthly tick. The lower your satisfaction goes below 100% will increase the malus, thus lowering prosperity.
Honestly, I'm so glad.
So if we go to an area with lower satisfaction, like over here, we can see that the very low satisfaction is giving an increased malus to prosperity. Let's say you're trying to focus on development and you want to get that flat bonus imparted by high prosperity. You want to work on the satisfaction of the population in that location and try to get it as high as possible. That might mean building new buildings which create a new good, importing goods to meet a need, or perhaps granting an estate privilege to make the estate happier. If a pop with low satisfaction falls below the rebel threshold, they will begin contributing to a rebel movement. The aggregate satisfaction of a location does not inform rebel contribution. A small religious minority, for instance, can fuel a movement across an entire nation, even in high satisfaction areas near your capital. Rebel progress can also be fueled by money from uncollected taxes due to lack of control in a location. Control is a powerful modifier that radiates outwards from your capital and represents the state's ability to exert its dominion on an individual location. Low control means a portion of the potential tax base is going uncollected or being funneled to rebellious dissidents. Higher control also makes pop conversion and assimilation easier and directly affects pop promotion speed. In basic terms, control dictates how much you can pull out of a location and how much you can influence into it. And tying back into what we were just talking